Welcome to the Big Life. I'm Neal Oates Jr. here with Mr. RLewis. How are you doing today?
Mr. Neal Oates Jr., I'm doing great, sir. I'm doing much better now that I'm here with you.
I'm telling you, I love talking to you because I know I'm going to get nothing but positive energy. And so here's what I also know. I know that it's genuine. And so that's why I am always excited. Robin, we are going to do something today that I am excited about because today we are not talking about strategy. We're not talking about scaling. We're talking about something most leaders never think about: your brain, right? You're like, hold on, you mean we never think about your brain? Because here's the truth, Robin and friends: your brain was not designed for the pace of modern life. The notifications, the constant input, the decisions, the pressure. So, Robin, let's start here. What do we mean when we say your brain isn't designed for this? What do we mean?
Yeah.
Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, where dreams aren't just imagined, they're built brick by brick, belief by belief. Hosted by Neal Oates Jr. and RLewis, this show is your invitation to discover your amazing capabilities, invest in your growth, and unleash your potential in ways you've only dreamed of. Join Neal and Robin as they dive deep into stories, insights, and tools designed to inspire you to show up big, live intentionally, and give yourself away for the betterment of those around you. Get ready to rise to what you're truly worthy of. The Big Life starts now.
I love our topic, first of all. And we're going to get a little science in here today. And not that I'm the science geek or anything, but, from the most of human history, stress was acute and physical. We had a storm, a threat, a conflict, maybe. So therefore, it was intense, but it was temporary. Your body activated, you dealt with it, and then you recovered. But modern stress is different, Neal. Just like you kind of talked a little bit about there at the onset, we're dealing with today hundreds of micro decisions that we're making every day. We're dealing with constant digital input, high performance expectations, financial pressure, relational complexity. And here's a key point, our brain, your brain, processes email, stress, and survival through similar physiological pathways. Your nervous systems doesn't say, oh, this is just, a text notification or a Slack notification. It reacts. Cortisol rises, our heart rate increases, and our focus narrows. That's stress responding. And so it's happening dozens of times a day. And so that's the difference that we're dealing with today, Neal. I noticed this recently. I was sitting at the kitchen counter early one morning and I was just answering emails. The house was quiet. I was drinking my coffee. Things were calm. And then my phone buzzed. I think I got a text. I got a ding in there. I got a calendar reminder. I mean, these notifications all came in about a minute. And I felt my shoulders kind of tighten up, and I got my breathing got shallow, because I was like, what's going on here? And nothing was wrong, but my body reacted like something was. And that's the nervous system doing what it was designed to do, to detect and respond to stimuli. And the problem is that modern stimuli never stops, Neal. That's what we're talking about today, folks.
Robin, I want to jump in here and talk about a similar moment that I had at a red light recently, right? And so I reached for my phone without even thinking, right? You know how you have your phone and they say don't text and drive and all that, and we know that. But I didn't need my phone, right? I didn't reach for it because I needed it. I just because I felt uncomfortable sitting still for about 20 to 30 seconds. You know how when you're there and you don't know what to do, so you do what you're comfortable doing, what you always go back to. And then I realized something. My brain has been trained to expect stimulation. And so that's what we call that dopamine conditioning. that every notification creates a small reward loop. So now, this thing that I shoot for being still, the thing that we say we want and why we work so hard, right? And why we answer all the phone calls, stillness, that very same thing that I say I wanted, now it becomes and feels unnatural. Right. And so the challenge is that when stillness feels unnatural, your favorite word, reflection, becomes difficult. And if I can't slow down long enough to reflect, there's no way that I'll be able to learn and improve on the things that I've experienced.
Yeah, that's a good example too, man. You know, and our brain, your brain, for our listeners, has limited processing capacity, right? So every open tab that we have on our computer, every unresolved task, every unread message, it consumes mental bandwidth. And here's the important part. The brain, it does not fully relax when they're open loops. And so we might not even realize it, but the brain is still going. And so even when you think you're resting, your mind is still scanning. And that's the important part for us to consider.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that explains something that many leaders feel, but we don't understand, right? So, we say, I didn't do anything extreme today, but I am exhausted. Have you been there before? And so, what that is, it's not a physical exhaustion, it's that neurological fatigue. And so, we hear it all the time about decision fatigue, and we think it's for someone else, but decision fatigue is real. And you mentioned those micro decisions earlier, Robin, and I want our audience to hear that. Is that the average adult? Now, here on the Big Life, average is a four-letter word. It's a bad word. We don't like using it because we are the elite. So that means that we are worse than the average adult. But hear me out. The average adult makes thousands of micro decisions daily. If you're a leader, if you're a parent, if you're someone who's engaged, you might be at thousands of thousands of thousands of decisions daily. And here's what Robin and I want you to hear, that each one of those micro decisions consumes energy. So by the time you get home, by the time we get home, our brain has been switching context all day. And switching task is expensive. It is drawing from that emotional, that mental, even that physical store of energy that we have.
Yeah, so let's talk about multitasking, right? That's a thing that, yeah, we think we multitask, but what we're actually doing is we're task switching. It's like what Neil was talking about earlier on. When you answer an email during a meeting, your brain disengages, it shifts context, and then it re-engages. That's the way that it works. And so each shift burns energy. Research work shows that task switching efficiency, task switching reduces efficiency and increases error. You don't just lose time, you lose depth. And so we might think that we're doing well with the multitasking. Neil, I remember coming home one day, this is a few years back. We were having some people over to the home, and I was late coming back with the food that we had ordered. And I was speaking to somebody on the phone. I don't even remember who it was now. Here's the long story short. While I was talking to them on the phone, I was bringing the food in, and people were already here. And so I'm saying hello, I'm bringing in the food. And then when I was done, I had to stop and ask my wife, did I bring in so and so? Because I couldn't remember what I had brought in. I couldn't remember if I had brought in all the food. And sure enough, I hadn't. There was some stuff that I thought I was finished, but it was still in the car. I realized then that because I was distracted with the discussion on the phone, I was not really giving my full attention to the other thing that I was doing.
So, Robin, I'm going to join you and I'm going to go ahead and share one of the things that I used to be proud of, right? I used to pride myself on answering emails during meetings. And yes, we're talking about physical meetings and on Zoom meetings, right? Because they could see me, but they don't know what I'm looking at. I thought I was being efficient and effective. I thought I was this guy who was getting five or six things done at the same time. But what I was really doing was fragmenting my focus. I was never fully present in the meeting and I wasn't fully present in the email. And here's what happened. Those moments of fragmentation, both in the meeting and the email, they added up. And so over time, divided attention becomes divided presence. And so I had to understand that I had to be what we call be where your feet are. And so I did not want to have divided presence in my email and then them look at me and call on me during the meeting and I say, "Oh, I'm sorry," and not hear it because my attention was back and forth. And so what I was proud of at one moment, the more educated and aware I became ashamed of, and then I said, I have to do something about this.
Right on. That's so good. So, here, let's talk about now how this might affect the relationships and the relational side of things. If your nervous system is in micro alert mode for 8 to 10 hours a day, then when you walk into your home already loaded, you might say something like, well, it was just a normal day, but neurologically, it wasn't normal. That's the point. You've had dozens of stress spikes. So when your child asks a simple question, or your spouse or your significant other asks a simple question, it feels heavier than it should. And if you've been there, don't put up your hand on this one. But when your spouse brings up something small, it lands sharper than it needs to. Most relational tension doesn't start in the heart. It starts in an overloaded nervous system.
So, Robin, everything you're saying, you told us not to raise our hands. So, for those of you who can't see me, you don't have to worry about it. But I want to talk about like, just as people, as you and I here, but what we start to understand about ourselves as overstimulated people. Once we're overstimulated, we're less patient people, right? And it's not a character flaw, it's just biology. So you don't have to condemn yourself for being an impatient person because you're overstimulated. Because when cortisol remains elevated, your tolerance decreases, your reactivity increases, right? This is a survival mechanism. So sometimes the solution isn't better communication techniques. Many times the solution is a better recovery rhythm. So I would love that for us to be aware that we don't need to communicate better. Maybe we need to recover better, maybe before we walk in the house after the end of a challenging day.
It's so true. And Neil, you said it earlier today, and you oftentimes refer to me as a reflection guy. But I want to talk a little bit about the deeper consequence of what we're sharing today. If your brain never slows down, then you're going to lose reflection capacity. That's a reality. And without reflection, we drift.
That word.
Yeah. I remember sitting outside one evening, no phone, just quiet. And I realized something that made me feel uncomfortable, Need. I had been productive, but I had not been reflective. I was executing well, but I wasn't evaluating my direction. I wasn't taking the time. And the brain needs the silence. We've talked about this before on our show. The brain needs silence to consolidate information. Without quiet time, integration does not happen. And so it can take away from the reflection that we know we need.
And so, us speaking to our audience today, I think it's important because even though we're talking about our mind and our brain and the way it works, that's a critical leadership insight that you just shared because you talked about sitting there quiet, having been productive in the silence. Here's what I'm going to tell us is that silence isn't passive. Like being still is not passive. That's when we are integrating what we've done, what we've learned into our system, into our lives. Because the brain uses quiet moments to organize memory, clarify priorities, and here's the big one: reduce stress chemistry. So it needs those quiet moments. Many of us pride ourselves on the go, on the hustle and the bustle, on the striving. But when we eliminate silence, we eliminate the consolidation. Without consolidation, we lose clarity. And I can't stress enough that for the goals that we're going after, for the big lives that we are seeking to live, we need clarity almost more than anything else.
It's so true, man. I remember you and I talking at the end of the year. I don't know if you remember this, where I shared with you that I sensed that I just needed to kind of just get away by myself and just kind of be in a place where I can have quiet. You remember me sharing that?
Yes, I do.
I think, that maybe I was not allowing those kind of things to happen enough to where I got to that place where I just felt like I needed that. And I think that's a part of a rhythm that we can put in place here. So let's talk some practical stuff that we can do, Neal. What's some practical adjustments that we can share with our audience, with our listeners today? What do we do about this? And we're not talking about any dramatic life change, first
Yep.
of all. Let me say that. But what we are talking about is maybe changing some rhythms, right? So rhythm change. What we're talking about here, maybe, for example, is how about just focus on a single task for 30 focus minutes per day, right? Just focus on a single task. What do you think, Neal?
So on that, to make it super practical for us, Robin, what if we just operated with one tab on our browser window open for 30 minutes?
I
So
like it.
when you say that, I know I'm horrible for having 4 or 5 windows open, tabs open. And so when you say single task for 30 minutes, what if I was only in my MLS for 30 minutes as opposed to jumping around? Just came to my mind. Go ahead, sir.
Great example. That's another good example that we can do, just changing that rhythm. So we're setting boundaries essentially. And how about protecting transitions, like especially one, and we've talked about this before also, walking into your home. So limit what gets immediate access to your nervous system, right? So protect transitions and then limit what gets immediate access to your nervous system. Build one intentional pocket of silence into your week. One intentional pocket of silence. Calm is a leadership advantage. That's the point. A regulated nervous system is influence because when you're steady, you you create steadiness, and steadiness goes a long way.
So, Robin, here's what I want to, if I have the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, let me just speak into your lives quickly. I want to remind you or offer an idea. Maybe you're not behind. And I know you hear me saying that. I don't know you personally, but you said, Neal, you don't understand what I'm looking at. Maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're overloaded. Maybe you're not unmotivated. It could be that you're overstimulated. So, as we talk about the brain that you have not being built to handle what we are putting it through daily, just keep that in mind that you might not be behind and you might not be unmotivated. It might be overstimulation.
I hope this adds value to you today. Here's the point. Your brain was not designed for constant input. And let's face it, in our fast-paced world today, there's a whole lot of input, and it just gets more and more and more as we progress with technology. But you can design rhythms that protect your. That's what we're suggesting that you do. The big life, it's not about doing more. It's about building something that's sustainable. That's why we share this with you today.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as we talk about building something sustainable, that's what we are doing here on The Big Life. And one way that we build, the best way that we build, is by having our audience, our listeners and viewers to invite to share these episodes with those that they love, care about, that they see something in. So, share this podcast with them. We are making sure that all of our contact info is in the show notes or the description of each and every episode. So, if you have questions, questions, if you want to connect, if you want to follow, that information is going to be there. And we want to say thank you. We appreciate you sharing your big life with us and allowing us to be here. And so I'm going to encourage you to make one adjustment this week. Figure out what just one adjustment. Robin said we are not asking you to do something dramatic. Just make one adjustment.
Right on. Well done, Neal. What a great time together again. And let's close this out as we always do, folks. Our family of listeners, remember, we love you. God loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so until the next time we see you or you see us, remember, we're right there with you. Peace.
Peace.